if we don't have the labor to harvest the crop, we can't feed our nation. So we started calling our congressmen and our elected officials saying, hey, we really have a problem here. We need some help. And we worked on that for about a week or two. And finally, between all the pressure, the political pressure that we put on both sides of the aisle, we got a reaction. And they opened up the necessary people in the federal government to go ahead and start the process of paperwork about a week before the rest of the federal government opened up. So they got started processing the paperwork, but we needed a stopgap because we knew those people weren't ever going to make it in time for harvest to start. So what the federal government allowed us to do is the people that were in the other growing region at the time, it allowed us to go ahead and bring them here to Yuma to get us started.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. So, again, we're here in Yuma, Arizona, on a border trip that Americans for Prosperity is holding. We've brought people down to the border to kind of see what the situation has been. And, the border has been a hot topic over the last number of years. It's been fascinating to talk to people whether in law enforcement or in government here. But today we got a great opportunity to talk to Cory Mellon, who is the COO of Mellon Farms, his family agriculture operation that he runs with his two brothers. And they have a large operation here in just right up against the border here in Yuma. And I'm super excited, Cory, to talk about the work you guys do, because the scope of it is so much bigger than I really realized. So maybe tell us a little bit about the family operation and what this industry means to America.
Well, thanks for having me. So I'm a third-generation farmer here in Yuma, Arizona. We grow primarily vegetables, lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, romaine, all your leafy greens. And little fact about Yuma, we supply the United States and Canada's leafy green supply from basically Thanksgiving through Easter. So for 22 weeks, if you eat a leafy green, 90% of it is going to come from Yuma.
Wow.
So we're proud of that. And it's not because we've captured the market on the leafy green sales. It's because Yuma and the surrounding area, the Yuma growing region, the surrounding area, is the only place that we have the climate, the water, and the soils to do that. It's too cold in most other regions to grow leafy greens during that time period. So very proud of that.
I can't believe that 90% for half the year is here. So if people are eating a salad over Christmas, yep, or eating some broccoli in January, which I'm definitely apt to do, it's coming from here, yep, which is really is quite amazing, and also means that it's important that we don't screw this up here.
Yes,
I think I've heard you earlier say it's really a food supply, a national security type issue.
It is. It's a national food security issue here. If we're affected, whether it's weather or water issues. Obviously, the Colorado River is going through I think a 20-year drought so far. We're highly looked at to make sure we have a stable supply of leafy greens for our communities across the United States and Canada.
So it's no secret over in the last administration especially, the number of migrants coming over the border illegally really spiked and was a real, we heard from the mayor earlier, it was just a real drain on the community and a real strain. But you guys are the first property there and are really impacted. How did that impact you, your family, and the business?
So when the United States Border Patrol lost operational control by no fault of their own, and we saw 1,200 people coming across the border a day, they were coming through gaps. The end of the wall, Trump's wall, they stopped building, and at the end of the wall, all those people were lining up and coming across. Well, those openings are on the edge of our production fields. And we have a very complex food safety regulations that we have to abide by to keep the food that we grow for our citizens safe from foodborne illnesses. And when you have people coming across that don't know our safety rules and walking through your production areas, sleeping in your production areas because they can't get to town, and eating in your production areas, that becomes a major issue. And so that was amplified by just the sheer volume of people that were coming across in those weeks and months during that time. So leafy greens and specialty crops, they don't have insurance policies, right? We can't go buy loss insurance for them. So when the farmer would deem that production area it was a food safety risk to put into commerce, they would just those fields down. There's no government payback for that loss, right? The private farmer had basically eat the loss, and then it becomes okay if this scales up, and we can't stop the flow of illegal immigrants. How far does this go? Are we going to have a national food security issue? And those were real conversations that we were having, daily. With all of our elected officials, with the sheriff, with the police, with the Border Patrol, and everybody that was working on the issue down here.
So just so people can picture it, because I had the good fortune to go to the border today, and I mean your fields go right up to like a road that is next door to
10 steps.
Yeah, I mean the first thing people get to if they come through that border wall is your fields.
A leafy green field production area, yes.
And so if somebody, God forbid, defecates in it.
Yes. And it happened.
Yeah, you can't, because you use irrigation.
Yes.
So you can't wash that around and get on all the stuff, all the food, because you have food safety regulations. And so that was playing a real hit to, I'm sure, your business and all the others.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, financially, yes, for the farmer, but more importantly, we have to keep our food safe for people to consume. So nobody was willing to even risk, harvesting and that and putting in the food supply. So it was down. It was discarded, and all the money that was poured into that crop to go to market was lost. And more importantly, that food was bound for somebody's plate that didn't arrive because we had to disc it down.
So was it not until the Trump administration came in, or were there other things that helped mitigate that real problem that was facing you guys with the migrants coming in?
During the early stages of the Biden administration, they weren't a whole lot of help. So on the local scale, the county and the city came together along with what federal partners could do at the time, and we immediately took simple things. We took porta pots out there, and when you have 1,200 people standing around in the middle of nowhere, there's nowhere to use the bathroom out in the middle of nowhere. So they brought those in, simple solutions. And then as time went on, Arizona's Governor Ducey at the time, the fence was built except for two gaps. The Algodones gap was just missing the gates. The gates weren't up. So you had miles and miles of fence, but you had an opening in it, a couple 100 foot wide because gates were missing. And then down south of that, there's a 7-mile gap that wasn't completed yet. So Ducey and his team came down and said, hey, what can we do as a state in the meantime while we're waiting on the federal government to react? And they decided to put double stack containers in those gaps to help mitigate the one area. And it really helped the Border Patrol out because instead of having to monitor 2 areas of mass immigration and mass lines, it forced them down to 1. So they only had to go to one place to pick up the people and start processing them. So, as a community at the local and state level, Arizona and Yuma stepped up to help, protect our community and our families, and B, kind of help the Border Patrol get it down to 1 area to monitor versus the 2 or 3 that they were dealing with at the time.
One thing that's been interesting for me to learn is the role that legal immigration plays, the essential role that plays in your industry and in your business. Can you kind of talk to people about that and the generational legacy it has?
Yeah, so I'll go back 100 years. 1925, 26% of the United States population worked in agriculture. So 1 out of 4 of the American population worked in agriculture. Fast forward 100 years, 2025, and now depending on whose data set you look at, it's anywhere from less than 1% to 1.5%. I think it's Purdue's statistic that says it's less than 1. So in a room full of 100, there's only one person in that room that produces every meal that you eat all year long. And it doesn't matter if it's a protein, a grain, or a leafy green. There's only one person doing it. And there's a few reasons for that. Going forward from 1925, there was a need during World War II. People had to go fight the war overseas. And then the United States government needed people to help, keep the war machine going and building everything that the men and women fighting had to have, all the equipment, all the tanks, all the guns. So there was a huge need for more labor in an urban setting to work in factories. So people started moving from the rural areas of America and started really going into cities where they can go work in those factories. So since that time, and so technology comes into play, to replace those workers that were lost, and technology comes into place. So ag started feeling the pinch, even back then, of not having enough people to harvest their crops. Well, on the agronomic side, your corn, your soy, your cotton, they concentrated on that because that's where the legions of people were. And they invented machines that could actually start harvesting those crops. And now today we have $1 million cotton pickers, and we have $1 million combines that thrash the grain. The specialty crop world doesn't have that. Everything is still essentially hand harvested. And it doesn't matter if you're picking a leafy green in Yuma, Arizona, or in the Central Coast, or if you're picking peaches in Georgia, or wherever. That's still primarily hand labor. Strawberries, hand labor. So you go down the specialty crop list, and it's still primarily harvested by hand, which takes legions of people to do. So there's been a huge need, for workers in agriculture. I think it was 46 or 56, the United States government, saw the need, and they started the Bracero program. And that lasted, I don't remember off the top of my head, maybe 10 or 15 years. And then it went away for political reasons. The need didn't go away. So the United States government has come up with the H-2A program. And what that is a temporary program for American farmers to utilize on a temporary basis. So we have year-round employees all year, but what we don't have is enough employees to harvest the crops when they need to come off. So what the H-2A program does is it allows us to petition the United States government saying, hey, we can't hire American people to pick these crops and help us get that crop in the market to feed our country. So they say, okay, go ahead and submit your paperwork and we'll review that. And they're all vetted. They go through 4 government agencies, Department of Labor, Department of Homeland Security, and a few others. And what that allows us to do is temporarily bring up from 4 to 6 months the necessary amount of people to come work in agriculture and help us harvest those crops. And then when they're done, they go home. Well, the entire time that they do that, they're sending money back to their families in their own countries. It's very complex. It's a broken system, and I think everybody knows that. But it's a necessary system. So on H-2A, you have to provide their transportation from their home country. You have to pay for all the paperwork that they have to go through all the government agencies. You have to house them while they're here. You have to feed them all their meals while they're here. You have to guarantee them so many hours a week, a minimum. And that's all built into the system. But without that, the United States would lose the ability to grow their own food here in the United States. And that, as far as a national food security issue, is it's quite frightening, to be honest. There's only a few things that a country needs, or that humans need to sustain, right? And it's oxygen, it's food, it's water, and it's shelter. And if the American population loses its ability to feed itself as a country, we're going to be in a real bad spot. And without those workers, the easy and simple solution is to send our agriculture production to a third party, right? We'll send it to other countries. And, we've done that historically, we've done that with our energy production, our oil. I think everybody remembers the 1970s oil embargo and how that worked out for us. But, if we do that with ag and those countries decide to eventually someday cut us off, we've gone to war for much less than food supply. When the American consumer walks in a grocery store and it's bare, there's going to be some real problems. And that's what we need to think of as a nation. And we have to keep control of our own food production.
So the legal workers who've worked with you.
Yes.
My understanding is that there's just that these are good jobs for folks. And they come from Mexico, to sleep in their own home in Mexico, come to the border, wait in line, come and work for you, return home to their family. But this is a program that works for the worker also, right? And so,
no, it certainly does.
What kind of and do you guys have a lot of repeat kind of like folks who keep coming back year after year, generations?
Yeah. So we do have a lot of year-round employees on the farms here, and a lot of them live down on the Mexican side of the border, and they go live their houses and their homes and their families are on Mexico, and they come up here daily. They cross the border. They wait in line, they cross the border, they come to work, they work their shift, and then they go home back to their families. And it works well for them because our minimum wage, which no farm in Yuma pays minimum wage. There's a couple jobs that we pay minimum wage for, but, these are good paying jobs. And, they go home at night and return the next day. And they've been doing this for years. One of the most proud things about my family that we really appreciate, I'm a third generation farm and our farm's 80 years old this year, but we've had fourth generation employees. Wow. This young man that worked for us for a couple of years after graduated high school, his great grandfather started with my grandfather. Wow. So we had literally on the farm 3 generations. The fourth generation had already passed, but the fourth generation worked on the farm for a couple of years. The great-grandfather immigrated from Mexico. They did it the right way. And to become a United States citizen for the last 30, 40 years, it's expensive. Yeah. And it's time-consuming. The process was convoluted. You have to, most of the time, you have to hire lawyers and you have to travel. From Yuma to Nogales to go do the paperwork. It's expensive. But their family came across, immigrated, became United States citizens and chased the American dream. And this young man worked for us after high school for a couple of years, and eventually, he left us and got out of ag, like most Americans have, and he became a United States Border Patrol agent.
Wow. So how fascinating. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I know this community is full of Border Patrol agents. Yes. I think it said there's over 800 part of the community, part of the fabric of the community. So a few months ago, the U.S. government shut down. Yes. Our group, Americans for Prosperity, was very vocal and saying that there's no reason for this. This is bad for America. It's no way to run a government. We need to reopen. Unfortunately, in particular, Senate Democrats kind of held out for, we think it was theater really, but they wanted their Obamacare subsidies and all. But, to the detriment of a lot of people who are working with the American government. But, there was some clear things that we saw with the military, with parks and other services. But how did it affect you guys?
So, in part of the H2A process, Yuma starts harvesting their crops to ship across the U.S. and Canada. We pretty much start the second week of November, right before Thanksgiving. And part of the H2A process, you have 70 days. The way I understand it, you have 70 days to submit your application for the need of H2A workers to supplement harvest. So if you're going to start, call it November 15th. If you're going to start, you submit the paperwork 70 days prior, so the end of August, beginning of September. So the first part of the process is the United States government has 30 days to process and say yes or no, you can have those workers. And so if you submitted into September, 1st of October, or end of August, 1st of September, your first 30 days is somewhere around the 1st or 2nd of October. And what happened was the United States government shut down on October 1st. Well, when that shut down, all that paperwork that was in play that had 70 days to get done just stopped. So when the government first shut down, we're like, okay, how long is the shutdown going to be? A week went by. Okay, this doesn't look good. 2 weeks went by. This doesn't look good. So about the third week of October, I had a conference call with a labor contractor that was going to supply some people to help harvest these crops. And we started off the Zoom meeting with, he said, oh, well, I got some good news and some bad news. And I said, well, let's start with the bad news. And he said, well, we don't have all of our employees. I said, what do you mean you don't have all your employees? He goes, the government shut down and the paperwork stopped. Well, I can't walk out to the field of my crops and say, hey, you need to quit growing. I can't harvest you. And you can't go past a certain day. It will spoil in the field if you don't harvest it when it needs to be harvested. So it was a major problem. So I got off that Zoom meeting with him, and I called another labor contractor. And I said, hey, I was just talking to a labor contractor, and he said he had a problem. He goes, I have the exact same problem. I'm like, okay, this isn't good. So I called a third one. He got same story. We've got a problem. So here we are, we're about to start harvest, to start supplying United States and Canada for 22 weeks. And we don't have the necessary amount of people to harvest the crop. And then it becomes, okay, we have a national food security issue once again. If we don't have the labor to harvest the crop, we can't feed our nation. Mm-hmm. So we started calling our congressmen and our elected officials saying, hey, we really have a problem here. We need some help. And we worked on that for about a week or two. And finally, between all the pressure, the political pressure that we put on both sides of the aisle, we got a reaction. And they opened up the necessary people in the federal government to go ahead and start the process of paperwork about a week before the rest of the federal government opened up. So they got started processing the paperwork, but we needed a stopgap because we knew those people weren't ever going to make it in time for harvest to start. So what the federal government allowed us to do is the people that were in the other growing region at the time, it allowed us to go ahead and bring them here to Yuma to get us started while the federal government finished processing the paperwork for the new people to show up. But the H-2A system, as far as being an employee of the H-2A system, I'm gonna say 80-90% of them are repeat employees that come back up and they work here for 4 or 5 months. They go home, they send their money home to their families every week. And then they go home after 4 or 5 months work in the U.S. and they go back to their homes and they live down there. And then the following year they come back up. They're repeat customers to the system because what they make here, what they make here in an hour is what they would make in a day in their home country. Yeah. So for them, it's a great system. And they want to come back. They want to work and send their money home to their families and save up and then come back and work again. It's a good system, but it really needs to be re-examined and streamlined to make it work for everybody.
Well, I know that we have the point of view that the legal immigration system needs a lot of work.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I think first and foremost, what we're really happy about, and I'm sure you are way more happy about, is that the legal immigration system, that our border is as secure as it's been in probably our lifetime, and hopefully it'll continue that way.
Yeah.
Just to wrap us up, what has a more secure border meant for you, and does it change how you look at your planning for the future?
Yes. So I'm a little bit different than most everybody. My parents built a house on the farm that their great-grandparents homesteaded. It's 400 yards from the Mexican line. I grew up 400 yards from Mexico. Thursday night when I go sit out in the back patio with my parents growing up, you literally could hear the mariachi bands from our back patio. So my parents live there now. And during the initial onset of the 1,200 people a day, my elderly parents who are in their 70s, they lived on the front line, literally 400 yards from the front line. My current house, where I live now, is about a mile from front line. You know, when I go home at night, when I walk through my front door, I can see the border wall lit up like the 4th of July every night. So growing up in a community that close to the border, you know, I grew up watching illegal immigrants coming across daily, you know, and then, you know, when we were used to seeing, you know, a couple dozen people every once in a while coming across. And then all of a sudden, now we're to the point where it's 1,200 a day. You know, it's a scary situation as a community to handle the amount of people that actually live in our community. You know, we had 300,000 people in 1 year come through Yuma. You know, it's there's not 300,000 people in Yuma to begin with that live here. So yes, having a secure border, you know, is incredibly important. And unless you live on a border town, you don't understand that. It's hard to explain that to somebody that lives in the middle of the United States unless you see it for yourself. You could tell the story, but unless you actually witness it, it's incredibly hard to comprehend. But yes, having a secure border is extremely important to the United States. Having a legal way to become a United States citizen is very important. Yeah. We are a country of immigrants, and I still think we should be having immigrants come. You know, it's the American dream. If you want to come, you know, live out that dream, you know, we just need to fix the system and secure our border so we can have those people come in the right way.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the leadership that you've shown in this community, and the fact that for you sharing your story with us. I really appreciate that, sharing with all of our subscribers and our listeners. And thanks for all the food that you guys grow. I'll think of you guys next time I'm having a good salad.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks again. All right. Well, folks, if you want to see some more about the border tour that AFP is doing, be sure to check out our Facebook or Instagram page where Clayton Roush will be taking you along. Also, always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.